Crazy Stuff. A short story by John Leslie Butchert.
The moon hung stolid, dominant in a black sky, baseball perfect and belly round, its craters and ridges like the pockmarked face of an ancient farmer, or perhaps like the face of God, if God had acne scars and too many possibilities behind his eyes. Below the bloated moon, in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, a million idiots bloomed. The college students carrying out their nightly ritual of organized debauchery, their illicit youthfulness echoing off brick buildings like a chocolate-rich universe awakening. Edward L. Anderson III watched them from the shadows, being of the air yet red clay in form. The pockets of his dirty overcoat held his stash of stolen beanie weenies. Through the window of the ice cream parlor, he studied two girls with an intensity that made them squirm. Their mouths worked the ice cream cones with unconscious sensuality, and Ed's eyes grew wider with each lick until they noticed him. Who's to know we lick, we murder? Who's to know?
Get lost, you creep,
one girl said as they fled the parlor.
Get a life, bozo,
her friend added, their disgust bouncing off him like pebbles off a vessel in essence astonished by a warm bath of sea wash. The town tolerated Ed as it might tolerate an odd ghost, or scent a mysterious vapor, uncomfortable but familiar. At the cafe's poetry night, he'd listen intently to young women reciting verses about butterfly sex and mortality, then step up to the microphone himself, unfolding a ragged sheet of paper, slowly and with great effort, like a casket opening or a stone door. My heart torn out for dog food, he'd intone. A brain that thumped out loud is ripped like a cabbage from its stem and transplanted in the ribbed cage. In the heart's place, a thinking thing barks at the pure, round moon.
watch out, he's got a questionable lump in his jeans,
one of the girls quipped. But Professor Whittle would nod appreciatively, seeing something in Ed's madness that the others missed. At the convenience store, Polly, the checkout girl, had developed a strange fondness for his nightly shoplifting routine. "How many cans of Beanie Weenies do you have in your pockets?" she'd ask. "4," Ed would answer honestly. "What else?" "A banana." "How many bananas?" "2." She'd ring up his stolen goods while he'd stare at her hands on the register keys, then try to pay with a $100 bill that appeared monthly from some mysterious benefactor. She'd refuse it, push the food toward him, and watch as he'd press his lips against the window glass before disappearing into the night. Charlie, the campus cop, pursued Ed with the dedication of a man chasing his own reflection. "Mr. Edward L. Anderson III has an arrest record a mile long," he told his partner Harry. "But he's never once been convicted. The charges were dropped every time. I don't get it." "Who the hell cares?" Harry replied. "He's a Fruit Loop man." When Rich Grant, the Tar Heel quarterback, stumbled onto Ed's hillside home, his tent and the ground around it, one night, his muscular silhouette cut against the brilliant moon like a paper doll. His leather sweater and pressed khakis marked him as everything Ed was not. Ed stood in the shadows, his John Deere cap pulled low, his overcoat hanging like a defeated flag around his thin frame. "Who's there?" Rich called softly into the darkness. "Is somebody out there?" His voice grew louder, angry at his own fear. "Okay, damn you, I know you're there." "I'm here," Ed answered, his body swaying with an unsettling animation. "Just me. Only me." "Stop with the friggin' games," Rich spat. "Okay? Just stop." You're afraid? Hell no. I'm not afraid. Ed then said, Yes, you are. I know you are afraid because of your voice trembling. I can tell you would rather be somewhere else entirely. You're damn straight about that. So you are afraid, Ed continued, his gestures growing more theatrical, of the unknown, of the steps your feet must take in life, of the black and eternal night, of the cold and endless days, of the mysterious abyss you are afraid. Everybody is afraid of the dark, Rich muttered. Not me. I am the dark. It's the shadow that I am. I am living here in the dark. I am especially alive here. They shared vodka and stories under the moon, Ed spinning tales of lost love and tragedy that were half truth, half delusion. He spoke of a professor's suicide, a pregnant lover named Laura, and his own innocence or guilt, depending on which version of reality was ascendant in his mind that day. Love has to come first, doesn't it? Ed would muse to anyone who'd listen, to anyone who would grant him a moment of their time. At a seminar on homelessness, Ed sat on stage with other street people, wearing a borrowed shirt and tie that made him look like a child playing dress-up. Are you saying that you live where you do by choice? The moderator asked. This is America, right? I am free to live where I want, to do, to be, to wish what I want. But if I didn't have a choice, I wouldn't be free, would I? The truth, when it finally emerged, was both simpler and more horrible than Ed's elaborate fictions. His father, a brilliant but tormented poet, had murdered Ed's mother before turning the gun on himself. 8-year-old Ed had found them, received his dying mother's bloody kiss, and carried that crimson memory like a communion wafer dissolving slowly on his tongue for all the years since. You can't keep screwing your friends, Ed, Rich had shouted when he learned the truth. You can't keep screwing them in the head. But Ed was already running, arms outstretched, spinning through the campus while reciting his mantra. Star, tree, stone, air, light, mother. When his mind finally cracked open, or was it my mind, they found his notebooks, dozens of them, filled with the kind of poetry that could only come from a man who had kissed death on the lips as a child and spent the rest of his life trying to make sense of that kiss. I rained my cover on the land, the warmth of her wet hands wrapped round and round me. This man is a genius, Professor Whittle declared, reading through the spiral-bound collections, surf-riding on the past. No, the Chancellor corrected. He's just a poet, and perhaps a saint. Two things the world has little use for. But who was speaking now? The Chancellor or the blameless flower blamed for all its thorns of magic? The doctors gave us drugs, but the Chancellor gave him back his saxophone, understanding that some wounds can only be healed by the music they make when the wind blows through them, when fear comes circumcised and the angel unmolested slays with love's sword shine. The last anyone saw of Ed, saw of me. We were playing saxophone at dawn on a beach somewhere, while a dark-haired poetess watched from a deck above, ship-shifting on the breaks.
You're going to wake the fish,
she called down to him. Ed just smiled and played louder, finally at home in that raw space where madness and memory collide, where poetry isn't beautiful or true but necessary as a mother's crimson stain on a child's cheek or a can of sweet beans in a coat pocket. O desire, run for me, sweet blood river of faith, gasoline of dreams.
Thanks a lot for listening to another story by Beyond Grateful and Fugitive Poets Press, where we enjoy making things for people to read and listen to.